Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm speaking about another episode from season 7. This is episode 21, The Torch. If you're enjoying these, please do hit like and subscribe. The Torch was written by Rod Peterson, who is also our producer. Along with he and his wife Claire Whitaker, they also wrote a number of other episodes. It was directed by David Wheeler. I think this is the only episode that David Wheeler directed, and I don't remember a lot about him, but I'm sure it was all fine, because if it wasn't, I probably would remember that. One evening, Daddy can't get to sleep. He's waiting for the children to all be home. Mary Ellen comes home from working late at the hospital, and Jason comes in from working late at the Dewdrop, and he tells us that the Dewdrop has been sold, that Velma has sold up and moved away. And the next day he'll be finding out who the new owner is and whether or not he still has a job. He has a few weeks left till he completes his schooling, and he says he could really use the money. The next day Jason does go to the Dewdrop, and he meets the new owner, Callie Jordan. And he asks about keeping a job, and she said she doesn't know. He sits down at the piano and just starts playing something. She is charmed by it and says she'll keep him. And then he says that his father could perhaps help with the renovations she wants to do on the Dewdrop. And she says, yeah, have John come by.
Mrs. Jordan, did I tell you my father's name is John?
No, Jason, you didn't.
So the first hint that Callie already knows of or knows John. When John comes by for his meeting with Callie, it does turn out they knew each other in school. He calls her Callie Mae. She calls him Johnny. He agrees to take on the job, although they're already, you can see that they just bicker. It's just the way it is. And I guess they always have. They had that kind of a relationship even when they were dating. At one point when they're in Ike's store, she comes by to order supplies, and after she leaves, Ike talks about how after Olivia's parents refused to let them get married, that John took up with Callie Mae, and that, he was a bit of a wild boy, and Corbeth is like, we do not need to hear about John's sordid past. And Elizabeth and Cindy are there, and Elizabeth pipes up and goes, I do. I want to know. And Cindy goes, me too. But we are not made privy to any additional information. All of the children begin to be concerned about John and Callie because he's spending a lot of time with her, and clearly there's potentially a little bit of flirtation going on, especially from Callie's side. And when John calls Olivia to talk to her, he doesn't mention that Callie's in town. So the children decide, and Ike advises, and Corbeth advises, that they should keep an eye on him. So they start reminding him that he's a grandfather. At one point, Mary Ellen comes with John Curtis and says, Grandpa, can you make some blocks for John Curtis? It's so cute. John Curtis is sitting there with like chewing on a piece of wood. He was probably teething. And then Ben also refers to him as Grandpa. And he's like, what's up with this? Only my grandchildren are allowed to call me Grandpa. So the children are doing various different things to try to remind John of Olivia. Elizabeth puts pictures of Olivia all over the house, and they're not too subtle. And John is basically saying, nobody has anything to worry about. It's fine. Ike talks to John and says, you're at a vulnerable age at this point. And John turns it around and goes, is there something I should know, Ike? And Ike's, what? Not me. And John's like, oh, good, glad to know it. So there is a lot of that. And Callie tries to get him to go places with her and do things with her. And, John's just looking at it as, she's fun to be with, but that they're friends. At one point, she talks him into racing to Ike's to get look at some light fixtures and stuff. And so we see another side of John, but he never crosses the line. The subplot involves the Walton kids getting together to open a canteen for the soldiers in it's Camp Rockfish, and saying that they don't really have any place to go or anything to do in their time off besides, potentially hang out at the Dewdrop Inn. So Elizabeth and Cindy get the idea to turn Godsey Hall into a canteen. And Corbeth thinks that's a good idea, so they all decorate it up, but they don't have a liquor license or anything like that. So when they open, nobody shows up. One soldier shows up, and when he finds out that they don't have beer, he leaves. And then another soldier shows up, and he's just looking for maybe a book. And Corbeth happens to be there. She says, "Oh, come with me." So they're a little discouraged by this and find that it's not working, and they're going to shut it down. Well, Callie comes by and says, "Look, I've been doing this for a long time, and you can't compete with the same kind of operation as the Dewdrop Inn, but you could offer them something different." And she suggests perhaps, they're lonely, they're away from home, and to create something that's more of a down home sort of space for them where they can play cards, they can read a book, they can play ping pong, maybe they're able to play pool or something like that, but just someplace where they can feel like they're at home. And they say, "Well, we don't have any more money." They said all their investors that put up money, they can't go back to them. They've asked everybody. And she says, "You haven't asked me." And they kind of smile. And now Callie's in on helping them create this new version of the canteen. And I think it's cute. You see them shopping for secondhand furniture. And here is our wonderful little recurring extra that we've seen any number of times. And in this case, she seems to be the owner of the used furniture shop. So they get the canteen all done up in this new fashion, and it is clearly going to be a success because young soldiers are in there playing cards, some are playing ping pong, some are dancing, some are reading, and they have created an alternate option for the soldiers from Camp Rockfish. At the end, when John is supposed to take Callie with him on a shopping trip for different supplies for the Dewdrop, and I believe they're going to Richmond or something like that, she tries to just get rid of him. She has hit a point where she recognizes that this isn't going to work and that she can't do this. She doesn't want to pursue John. She realizes that he is and always will be with Olivia and in love with her. And they basically talk, and John says, "Well, we can still be friends. Yes, Olivia's it for me. She always has been, she always will be, but, we can be friends." And, she just says it was too hard for her coming back here and then, remembering everything and what might have been and maybe what she wanted that didn't work out for her. But she then comes around and agrees that, okay, they can be friends. And he says that he had told Olivia that she was back and that all Olivia had to say was, "Oh, how's she wearing her hair these days?" And he's like, "I don't know." She says, "Well, go find out." Pay attention. So it's all good. And clearly John is not keeping this from Olivia. So when they go outside, he also points out, but, just to be on the safe side, he has invited Mary Ellen and John Curtis and I think Ben and Cindy. Anyway, a couple of the other children. And so they're all going to take this road trip together. So it's kind of sweet. So this brief opportunity for John to be tempted turns out for an opportunity for him to realize that he's really not tempted. I remember Leslie telling me that she never really learned how to drive this car. Here we see her pull up to Ike's store, which made me wonder, well, how did she do that? Did they get it running and all she had to do was sort of put her foot on the gas and drive forward 10 feet? Or did they start pushing it and then just let go and push her into it, but there was no ropes? Or I'll have to ask her about that one. So some of these little odds and ends were kind of interesting. I also kept trying to remember where exactly the Dewdrop Inn was located on the back lot, because I always thought it was like right by Ike's store. But now we have this new area by Ike's store where Godsey Hall is. So it made me think, okay, where was the dewdrop in? I've been further along past Western Street or past the jungle or something. I'm going to have to check out that one as well. So the more I watch, the more questions I have. So I'll just keep digging. What I really enjoyed about this episode was the sense of community, how the family wants to pull together to make the community work and function better for everyone who's there now, the soldiers from Camp Rockfish. And then how do they integrate a new person into the community who is also a potential threat, and how they navigate that, and how they find their way through as a family, how they all pull together to try to be there for John when they feel like he needs family support, and that reminder of family and Olivia. So I just thought it was kind of a very integrative episode of how they would pull together. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Besides the Walton family, and of course, Leslie Winston, now a member of the family as Cindy, Joe and Ronnie Claire were in this episode again as Ike and Corbeth. And there was the Reed twins, Michael and Marshall Reed, were there as John Curtis. And then we had Dorothy Tristan as Callie, and Wyatt Knight as Soldier 1, Daniel Zippy as Soldier 2, and Christopher Carroll as the Sergeant. Thanks for joining me for this segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. I'll be back with more episodes, more Ask Judy, and some special guests coming up. Thanks for watching.